Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Second Chronicles chapters 1 through 9 in our continuing study of the historical books. This is going to be the Solomon story, but maybe it's a Solomon story a little bit different from the way that we saw it back in First and Second Kings. Here's our outline. I'm using David Dorsey's outline from the Literary Structure of the Old Testament. Great book. If you don't have it in your library, you really ought to purchase it. We're going to begin way back in First Chronicles, chapters 1 through 9, with the genealogies. Remember that from Adam all the way down to the Babylonian exile. Then we saw the establishment of David's kingdom in chapters 10 through 21. It was a promise to David that his dynasty would be forever. He defeats all the enemies: Syria, Ammon, Moab, Edom, the big fight in the Valley of Salt, Philistia, and then his involvement into the priestly realm, appropriate involvement, nothing bad, but transporting the ark. And then we saw Israel under David as he prepared to build the temple. That was chapters 22 through 29. That brought us to the end of First Chronicles. Now we're looking at Second Chronicles, and we're going to be this time in just chapters 1 through 9, Solomon the temple builder, because that's going to be the focus of what he does. In a future class, we'll see Judah's folly and return, starting with Rehoboam, who loses the kingdom to Jehoshaphat, but then it's going to continue through that dynasty. And we'll finally see in chapters 21 through 28, 7 kings, Jehoram to Ahaz. Notice in these things, there's 3 crises threatening David's dynasty, so a connection to David's dynasty. There is again wars with Syria, Ammon, Moab, Edom in the Valley of Salt, and that's going to be quite a battle there, and Philistia. And notice those are all mentioned again. And now it's the king's involvement, not David's, but the king's involvement into the priestly realm. Some of that's good, some of that's not good. Uh, David's was good, some of this isn't going to be. And then finally, the last section will be Judah's final kings from Hezekiah to the Babylonian exile. And the last couple of verses are going to talk about the return from exile. So that's First and Second Chronicles at a really quick glance. Now, Second Chronicles, not disdaining everything we already saw, but notice we're chapters 1 through 9 is going to be the reign of Solomon, and everything about that is going to be good. When we looked at First Kings, the reign of Solomon, we saw some things that were good, and then we saw some things that weren't good. Those not good things aren't really going to be the focus of Second Chronicles. They're not going to be. It's not that they're denying it. It's just that they're not spending time there. And then we'll see the kingdom split under Rehoboam, starting in chapter 10. And that's going to be blamed not on Solomon's sin, but on Rehoboam's foolishness. And then we'll see a series of cycles of restoration and fellowship. So you'll see Abijah, Asa, and Jehoshaphat. And then from Joash to Ahaz, some of those are good, some of those not so much. Hezekiah to Josiah, and finally the captivity and the return. But it's all Judah under the kings. You say, is Israel mentioned at all? Israel is mentioned, but only when they're interacting with Judah. They're not mentioned on their own. So Second Chronicles chapter 1, verse 3, then Solomon and all the assembly with him went to the high place, which was at Gibeon. Remember how the tabernacle was at Gibeon, for God's tent of meeting was there, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, had made in the wilderness. So the tent of meeting has been now at Gibeah. It's been relocated there for quite some time. Verse 4, however, David had brought up the ark of God from Kiriath Jearim to the place he had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. So you've got the tabernacle at Gibeon. There's another tent that's been placed in Jerusalem just to house the Ark of the Covenant. The daily sacrifices, those are still happening, but those are happening in the tabernacle. You don't need the ark for the daily sacrifices. So there's really 2 places where you have, one place where you've got the regular worship, and one place if you're going to do the Day of Atonement. Now you need the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark of the Covenant is at Jerusalem. So we start off in chapter 1 with descriptions of Solomon's wisdom. And what happens in chapter 1, he asks for wisdom. We're familiar with that story where he prays for wisdom, and God promises because of his request for wisdom, yes, God's going to give him wisdom, but he's also going to bless him in all sorts of other ways too. He's going to give him both wisdom and wealth and power, and everything's going to be good. That's chapter 1. Next, in chapter 2, we see Solomon corresponding with Hiram of Tyre. And it's going to be mentioned by Hiram that the Lord loves his people. Hiram's going to recognize that the God of Israel loves his people Israel. Next, we have Solomon beginning to build the temple, chapters 3 and 4, and they've got the building supplies from Hiram, the cedars of Lebanon, and other things are coming up, craftsmen, and everything is good. And then the pivotal point in this part of the story is the dedication of the temple. Notice there's quite a few chapters. Chapters 5, 6, and part of 7 are given over to the dedication of the temple. We read in chapter 7, verse 1, when Solomon had finished praying, and there's a long prayer of dedication that Solomon gives, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. That's sort of what happened back when Moses had first made the tabernacle. Remember, Moses made the tabernacle, prayer of dedication, and God entered the building. And now it happens again. And we see in verse 2, the priests could not enter the house of the Lord because of the glory of the Lord filled the Lord's house. Doesn't mean they're never going to be able to enter it again, but just for this moment, as God's presence enters, his glory comes. It doesn't use the term here, but sometimes we'll talk about the Shekinah glory. In other words, Shekinah is just to abide, like to sit, to abide, to stay. So his abiding glory. So it's going to come and abide for a time. I'm not saying that God's going to go away, but they're going to be able to go in the temple again. And so once it's built and this has taken place, it will be back to using the temple as a regular place of worship. And next we have Solomon completing the temple. That's the rest of chapter 7, where everything is completed and everything that's supposed to be placed in the temple is placed in the temple. The lampstands, but by the way, it's not one lampstand now. Now it is 10 lampstands. Everything's multiples of 10. Think about 10 commandments and 10 plagues. So 10 lampstands and 10 tables with showbread, because the temple is twice as big as the tabernacle was. It's much bigger. Next, we read about Solomon interacting with Hiram again. This time it's rather interesting, but Solomon is giving Hiram some cities where they've negotiated, and it's sort of paying back for the supplies that were given both for Solomon's temple, but also for Solomon's palace. And Solomon also has a visit by the Queen of Sheba. And she is from far to the south. Sheba is in the south, way down at the southern end of the Red Sea. And she remarks that your God loved Israel. And so again, we see this reference to God loving his people. Your God loved Israel. Now, people have oftentimes made a lot of the Queen of Sheba, and all sorts of legends and fairy tales grew up about Solomon and Sheba having some sort of romantic entanglement. That's nowhere in the Bible. Now, if there's a romantic entanglement, it's her romance with the Lord, because she comes to hear his wisdom and hears about the Lord, and she talks about how your God loves Israel. That's great, but that's as far as it goes. And she is impressed with his wisdom, as are other people as well. And so finally, we come back to Solomon's wisdom and wealth. His wealth is seen in his riches and gold, and we see all kings, not just Sheba, but all kings, seeking his wisdom and bringing gifts, and everything is good and everything is wonderful. And we read in chapter 9, verse 26, he was the ruler over all the kings from the Euphrates River even to the land of the Philistines, and as far as the border of Egypt. The same dimensions that we'd seen in First Kings. Now, when it says he was ruler, that doesn't mean that he's like directly in charge, but the kings over those places are all giving him tribute. He's the big king, and they are the little kings around. And so the story comes to a close, and we don't read about a prophet coming and ripping up a new cloak and saying something about the kingdom's going to be taken away. That's not in the story. It's not denying that that's part, but that's not in the story. The story ends on Solomon's high note, and we'll see next time how the kingdom is divided. And we know that there's other things involved, but what we're going to focus upon is the foolish decision of Rehoboam, the one that comes after Solomon.